Each week we get tons of great questions from our very fantastic fans, and we decided that this week we would devote our show to answering those for you. So I'm gonna go meet up with some of my fellow hosts and get them talking. So, my daily driver is in fact the 2005 Honda Civic. I bought it when I was a starving graduate student and it has served me very, very well. In fact, it barely has any miles on it because with a job like this, you don't really drive your own car very often. So I'll probably have that Honda for another decade. And even then, I don't know if I'll hit 6 figures on the mileage.
When everything's not broken, sometimes I drive a 69 El Camino, but most days it's a 2010 Toyota Tundra. And I know it's imported, don't get angry with me, but I haul a lot of motors and junk parts and stuff around, so I need an engine, or I need something that will hold all that stuff. So, truck with a bed.
I actually don't own a car at the moment. The last car I had was a BMW 328 IS that I sold because I felt like I was neglecting it because I spent so much time in press cars.
Daily driver, which has been sitting at my parents' house for about the past 10 years, was a 93 Mustang 5.0 LX. Love that car. Was one of my first cars, and keeping it and hopefully one day getting it back rolling again, but haven't driven it since I've been working at MotorTrend.
One of the interesting things about this job is that your daily driver always changes because we're constantly testing different bikes. Today I rode in a Triumph Speed Triple R. I've probably ridden 5 bikes in the last week, so it's always changing, which is definitely an appealing part of getting to work at a motorcycle magazine.
Well, like Ari, the daily driver question is a difficult one to answer because one of the cool things about this job is that we ride different motorcycles all the time, sometimes a different one for 3 days straight. That being said, I do own a 2006 KTM 950 Supermoto, and it remains one of my favorite motorcycles that I've ever ridden, so I'm definitely proud to have that as a backup whenever I need it.
Now the top speed I've hit was 172 in a GT500. But I really want to break the 200 barrier, so I need a Lambo and at least 1.5 miles.
The fastest I've ever gone is around 180 miles an hour on a Ducati Panigale. Definitely don't tell mom.
Top speed, unfortunately haven't hit the 200 mile an hour mark, but been very close a few times. Been 190 plus in a Porsche GT2, 190 plus in a Corvette ZR1. Fastest speed was probably in the AMS Alpha 9 GTR, which I ran about 194, 195 in Mojave, and hope to get back in touch with them real soon to go do it again.
The fastest I've gone was at Bonneville recently. We set the world land speed record in a Jetta hybrid, and we went 186 miles an hour, and that's an average of 2 runs over the course of a mile. The peak speed was actually 187 miles an hour.
On water, I've been 141 miles an hour in my drag boat. And on land, I've been $170 in a GT500 Mustang.
The fastest I've gone is 186 on a 2011 ZX-10R, and that was at the racetrack. So it's not going in a straight line. That was actually cresting a rise and taking a corner, and you'd hit that speed every lap. There's a gentleman's agreement among manufacturers that the top speed will be limited to 186 miles an hour, so that's pretty much as fast as you can go on a stock bike, and it's terrifying.
How did I get this job? I worked very, very, very hard. I earned a bachelor's and a master's in English and journalism. I'm in a PhD program right now. I got 2 degrees in radio and television broadcasting. And while living in DC, I hosted about 7 shows. So I worked really hard. I prepared as much as I possibly could. And then MotorTrend actually had a competition for this set of new shows in which they were seeking hosts. So I submitted an audition tape along with hundreds of other people, and they chose me.
Got my job at MotorTrend through luck and timing. I was in college at the time, and for one of my classes had to do a report on somebody that had moved on into the field that we wanted to get into eventually. And I interviewed an editor at the time here at MotorTrend, Scott Mead. One thing led to another, and about a year later, got back in touch with him, started off as an intern, and now I get to be the road test editor.
I got my job through persistence and a whole lot of luck. I sent a lot of emails to the editor and eventually got my foot in the door doing some product evaluation, and then it moved on to photo modeling, and then next thing I knew, I got an actual job offer. But it all started when I wrote a feature story about a trip I took out of high school instead of going to college. I had just bought my motorcycle, and you know, September rolls around and you're supposed to go to school, and I realized how much it was going to cost, and I decided I'd much rather spend that money on gas riding my new bike. So that's what I did. I didn't go to school, and I cruised around America for 6 months and ended up in California, and knocked on the door of Motorcyclist magazine, and the editor at the time, Mitch Boehm, took me out to lunch and was really interested in the trip I had taken and had me write a story. So that kind of set the groundwork for everything that came.
The short answer is I got my job through Ari Henning. The long answer involves riding motorcycles my whole life, getting a journalism degree, calling motorcycle magazines, doing things that I thought would promote myself. Because ever since I realized I wasn't quite good enough to be a professional racer, I thought to myself I would really love to ride motorcycles around and write about it. That would just be the coolest thing I could do.
So fresh out of college, I was working in a hot rod shop in New York for my buddy Sean, and we were at a car show, and I met a guy with a camera. And I asked him what he did for a living, and he told me he went around the car shows, the whole country, and just shot photos of cars. And I wasn't making any money, neither of us were, and I thought, well, God, that's pretty cool, maybe I could do that. So I went back to college, crammed 18 units into one semester, graduated, and then packed everything I had and moved to California, which is actually where I grew up. And coincidentally, the day I got there was the day somebody quit at Mini Truckin' Magazine, and so I started working there, and yes, I'm a closet mini trucker.
I got this job through a lot of perseverance and some just dumb luck. Spent a lot of time working in college on getting a degree in journalism, and spent a few months sleeping on the floor of my friend's place while I was an intern here. And fortunately, the right time came, there was an opening, and that's when I was able to join.
Coolest thing about working at MotorTrend, one of the coolest things aside from obviously the vehicles, really cool people. My coworkers are awesome. We have a great time together, they're funny, but more importantly, they're smart, they're experts. And so I am suspended in a constant state of learning. And that is my ideal environment.
So one of the best things about working at MotorTrend, aside from driving all the cars, is learning and understanding the industry aside from the cars. It's fun driving cars, sure, but understanding why they work the way they do, how they're put together, the business side of it is just as interesting and just as fulfilling as driving the cars themselves.
It's not really a job, to be honest with you. Sooner or later, someone's going to figure out that this is way more fun and pay me much less, or find somebody better to do it. But yeah, I mean, I could be digging ditches or working at McDonald's, so this is pretty killer.
We get invited to go places and do things that it doesn't matter how much money you have, it doesn't matter how dedicated you are, you don't get offered that opportunity unless you work for a motorcycle magazine, and I feel fortunate every day that I get to do stuff like that.
The places I get to go, the things I get to do, the people we get to meet is a very unique experience. With this job, been able to travel the world. And then just some of the events that we go on with Beth's Driver's Car, Car of the Year. Again, the places that we get to go, the things we get to do, hanging out with Randy Popes, who helps us a lot on a lot of our adventures. Just kind of everything, it's the whole package. I mean, the car part is part of it, but it's how we get there and what we do while we're getting there that's the real fun.
One of the coolest things about working here is probably the shop, because as much as I like to ride, I like to wrench. I mean, I'm a mechanic at heart, my father was a mechanic. And believe it or not, like several days a week after work and almost every weekend I'm in here working on something, whether it's for work or my own project or whatever. I just really love the fact that we've got an incredible selection of tools and all this space and like a really great environment to work on bikes. So definitely the fact that we have this shop is the biggest perk besides getting to ride cool stuff.
Oh, favorite MotorTrend memories. One of them definitely, again, driving that AMS Alpha 9 GTR. Unbelievably fast car. Another one was getting to drive the Bugatti Veyron when it first came out. Another big one is the drag race that we do. I mean, that's an amazing feat that we put together. It's not easy putting together 11 cars, finding an area big enough, and getting everybody's timing right to where we put out a good quality drag race. It's a lot of fun, a lot of work, but pays off in the end.
The coolest thing I've ever gotten to do was the first trip that I ever got sent on, which was to Japan for the 2009 ZX6R, and that's before the economy went in the tank, so Kawasaki had a ton of money. They flew us their business class. We spent 8 days in Japan. We got to tour their bullet train facility and their satellite production facility and ride in a helicopter, and then spend 2 days riding on their private test course, Autopolis, which you just don't get to do. I mean, it doesn't matter how much money you make, how famous you are, that's not something that you're gonna ever be allowed to do unless you get invited there. So I mean, that still stands as probably my favorite, my prime memory from becoming a motor journalist?
2 days ago I was in Texas and I was in a 1967 Plymouth Barracuda that we had just yanked out of a junkyard and rebuilt and made run. And I was literally sitting behind the burnout box when a 300-mile-per-hour jet car took off in front of me. And I swear to God, I thought the windshield was gonna blow out of the car. And then I got to make a run down the drag strip and I just thought that was the coolest thing ever.
My favorite memories of this job are getting to ride around with my friend Ari, who we've been doing wheelies on motorcycles since we were 8 years old. And being able to still do that stuff that we always had so much fun doing and get paid to do it now is unfathomable, really.
So how did I get into cars? Well, at a really base level, I'm just a huge proponent of human mobility. And admittedly, I'm obsessed with independence and I just see vehicles as the embodiment of freedom. So I just have an affinity for and fascination with the industry. There are so many cool things happening in the automotive world, and I'm going to use this show to take you with me.
My motorcycle passion really stems from my father, who started riding against his parents' wishes in his 20s sometime, and started racing when I was 2 years old. So I grew up around motorcycles getting worked on and ridden around in circles and ridden in the dirt and on pavement and fallen off of, and it's in a lot of ways just all I've ever known. It started from wanting to be like Dad, like every kid wants to be, and it's turned into the ultimate passion in my life.
Oh, as a kid, man, my stepdad was big into stock car racing. Was lucky enough to get to go to Ontario Motor Speedway, lucky enough to get to go to Riverside Speedway and see the King race and the Labanis and the Allisons and Dale Earnhardt, and that started it, and it grew from there and hasn't stopped growing. It's been great.
Motorcycles have always been a part of my life. My dad raced. My grandfather was a motorcycle cop in Miami. My dad raced from a very young age. I grew up at the racetrack with my co-host Zach, who you guys are familiar with. And it's always been a part of my life. It's always been something that I've loved doing. And I've always immersed myself in motorcycles in any way I can. I commute daily on one. I race motorcycles. I work on motorcycles. It's just who I am.
What I think got me into cars originally is when I was very little, just a newborn. My dad had a 911. And whenever I wouldn't stop crying, would stay up all night crying, he would put me in the back seat of the thing and just drive around the block, or probably drive pretty fast too, and that would instantly put me out. My granddad also had a 1972 Chevy pickup that I loved as a kid and always wanted to be around. And there's all these pictures of me just walking next to it, touching it, because I thought it was just such a cool truck. So I think that's what really started my passion for cars.
It's weird. My dad really wasn't into cars, and that's where most guys get it from, I think. He never owned a used car in his life, so consequently, I gave him hell the whole time I was growing up because I was ripping apart everything I could find in our driveway and staining it constantly. So since I was a little kid, I've just been into muscle cars, mostly because I think of the Dukes of Hazzard. That's pretty much it. Knight Rider, Dukes of Hazzard, A-Team, cheesy 80s television shows with cars as the prominent character just did it for me. I'd trade everything I have right now for a General Lee. Maybe even my kid. He's cute, but you know.
Man, the last question that we get all the time is, do you actually read our comments? Is it you who is responding? Yes, yes, I promise you it is. Every host cares a lot about the feedback, and we all respond directly to you. We don't have anyone else take that role because we deem this really important. So continue to give us your input, send us your feedback, let us know what kind of programming you want to see, and we will do our best to deliver.